Animals. My name is Shannon Cutts. I'm an animal intuitive and sensitive, an animal communicator, and Reiki Master Practitioner here at animallovelanguages.com. If your sound just bleeped out, that's Pearl Cutts. He is my 23 and a half year old feathered sidekick. He never misses an episode. And here at Let's Talk to Animals, we are all about demystifying, de-wooing, if you will, animal communication, interspecies animal communication. We are all about reconnecting ourselves, the human animal, to the rest of the wonderful species that we share planet Earth with, that we share our home with, and talking about how to rediscover some intuitive pathways to cross species boundaries and have really productive, enlightening, and inspiring conversations with animals, plants, landscapes, bodies of water, the whole planet, our solar system, all of life. And if that sounds too woo for you, but you're still listening, thank you. We love you. We really appreciate it. We know you have lots of podcasts to choose from and are delighted that you have chosen to share a little bit of your time, energy, and attention with us. So here this week, we have Diana Delmonte. Diana, I did not ask you how to pronounce your spirit name. Is it Biako? I'm going to butcher it, I'm sure. Biako.
I have a couple, but that's my Zen name, Biako.
That's the one I see here on the screen. It means what?
It means white light, or well, there's two different meanings. What be more Chinese is tiger. It's white tiger, Biako. White tiger, white light.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
The spiritual names that they're given to you, and then you're supposed to sort of work into them, like grow into the name that's given to you. Just
how beautiful. How very, very beautiful. Diana Delmonte is DianaDelmonte.com is actually your website, however, correct, for people to find you? Okay. And there's lots to find on your website. I've been quite fascinated. My dearest best friend who passed a year and a half ago was in the very beginning stages of taking Buddhist monk vows under the Shambhala tradition with Pema Chodron. And so it really speaks to my heart. Yeah, so it really speaks to my heart to hear about your spirit name in the Zen tradition and hear what it means. It's very meaningful. And I do understand how, because I remember when her spirit name was Gentle Graceful Lady, and she was just shocked when that's exactly how I experienced her, but she was just shocked. She was like, I don't feel like that. And I was like, well, when you doubt it, you can always ask me, because I totally see that. So thank you for sharing that beautiful little bit of personal information. So of course, in addition to the many, many different areas in which you've invested your time and energy into yoga, into your Zen Buddhist journey as a practicing nonviolence and offering yourself towards the path of peace, you are also an animal communicator. And so, of course, that's why I wanted to invite you to Let's Talk to Animals, because it feels very synergistic, this reverence and this honor for all life, and recognizing the sentience of all life, the consciousness of all life, the intelligence of all life, the intuition of all life. And I would love to hear your experiences with that. But of course, here on Let's Talk to Animals, we have lots of newbies who are just beginning their journey. We have lots of aspirational students who maybe don't even realize yet that their own animals may be calling them towards a deeper awareness of what's possible with interspecies communications. So I always like to invite our guests to just take us back to the beginning. Share kind of how you discovered that this was even a thing, it was possible, and that it was something you could experience.
Well, I think that my story is different than a lot of animal communicators, because I didn't have parents who rescued animals. I didn't grow up on a farm or a ranch. I didn't really have pets. I had two in high school. I had a couple of parakeets I was bonded to, but I never heard them telepathically. Um, when I was younger, we had a dog who was tied up
Yeah.
um, to his doghouse. I don't think I even ever petted him. Um, and I came home one day from school and I found him, he was foaming at the mouth. And then I don't know, he just disappeared. I don't know what my family did with him. Um, so that was my experience with animals. So fast forward, I'm in my 40s. I'm an artist. I don't, I have a partner. His name was Michael. 22 years together, no longer. But he played a very important part in this story because he brought home Beauty, my very first cat, a little kitten, a little
Mm.
black kitten. And I never wanted animals. We didn't want children. He was a musician. I was a visual artist. We were very dedicated, did not want any distractions or responsibilities in our life, just art. So I ended up 6 months later with four more cats.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was a
Well,
quick trajectory.
we went back and got Yudi's brother, and then two more. You know how this happens. Two more just showed up at my doorstep, and he
Somehow
said
they
no, no,
know.
no, and then eventually they came in. So long story short, I think after a while I might have had maybe six. So I adjusted to the life of cats. You know, it was very disruptive at first, but I adjusted to it. And then this is interesting because, and this is why when I teach animal communication, I love to have, there's always people in the class who say, I can't do this, or
Yeah.
I'm not getting anything.
Yeah.
And the truth of this whole thing is, you are getting something. You are always hearing your animals, but you just don't realize it. And I'll talk more about that later,
Hmm.
about how we begin to learn to listen. And it's so natural and it's so easy. It takes practice, though. But getting back to how I learned, how I first heard my animals, it was just spontaneous. I was a skeptic. As I said, I was an artist, and I had known about animal communication, but I thought it was kind of ridiculous.
Hmm.
I didn't believe it was possible.
Hmm.
I mean, times are different now, but back then, I didn't even, I didn't even think that animals could talk or even think. I just didn't know. And so one day I was writing at my desk, and my cats were around me, and my pen ran out of ink. So I got up to, and this is important. I'll tell you why in a second. But I went walking through the house looking for another pen. And so my mind, here's the point, my mind was relaxed. Spoiler alert, relaxed mind. I was thinking about my writing. My mind was pretty focused. And I'm walking through the house, and all of a sudden I heard in my mind as clear, so clearly, I heard, look out, I'm down here. And I looked down, and there was my cat Bubby. I was, I almost stepped on him. And he clearly stopped me from stepping on him. And I thought, no way. I must have just
Yes.
imagined
Of
it.
course.
Okay.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
we're hearing thoughts in our mind all the time. We're not aware of what we're thinking. And most of the time, we think the thoughts are ours. So that's important to remember as well. So that was number one. Then a couple of months later, and that was auditory. So you're not actually hearing with your ears, with your physical ears, but you're sort of like, it's a thought, like you hear it in your mind. That's what it is. It's no different.
Hmm.
It's your own voice. So then 2 months later, really, my cats taught me animal communication. 2 months later, I'm petting the same cat in the sun, and he was a black, but kind of mahogany almost in the sunlight. He had highlights in his soft, bushy, warm from the sun, and I'm completely again relaxed mind,
Hmm.
completely focused on brushing him. and with my hand. And all of a sudden I got an image. This time it was a vision, you see? Images come in on different levels. All of a sudden I got this image of him straining to urinate. It was quick,
Oh,
really,
wow.
like it was a flash like that. And he had a history of urinary blockages.
Got it.
So I thought to myself, is he telling me that he's having problems? And I dismissed it again. I thought, no, no way, coincidental. 2 days later, he blocked, and I had to rush him to the vet.
Hmm.
I still was not convinced that I was hearing my animals. We dismiss everything, we are dismissive because we don't believe it. So then a few months later, I had a dream. And so again, a dream. So animals get through to us when our minds are relaxed. So when you're sleeping, how much more relaxed can you get? I had asked Yudi to tell me before I went to sleep if he had pain in his body. I was sensing something was off. So I dreamt that there was a liquid in Yudi's body, on the surface of his body. And so when I woke up, I asked him if he was okay. He was sleeping in my bed, and I heard auditory again, take Bubba Louie to the hospital. And so I found Bubba Louie, and he had an abscess on his back, and it was actually spreading. I had missed it, so I rushed him to the vet. And two points here. Animals, obviously, Yudi didn't know what a hospital was, but they their thoughts, we interpret their thoughts. Animals think in pictures, and we interpret those pictures. We may hear them, they may come through auditory, they may come as visions, as images, actual pictures in your mind, or they can come as feelings in the body, like when you sense something. So those are the three main ways in which you hear an animal's thoughts. And so even though he doesn't know what a hospital is, that's my interpretation of his thoughts, and so on some level, I mean, animals know everything that's going on. They know everything. So he knew that Baba Louie needed help, and they know when you take him to a vet, they need help. So basically, that's how I started to learn, or that's when I realized after that third time. It took 3 times to convince me. I think I'm hearing my animals. So I bought a book. I started practicing sending thoughts, which is very, very easy. And all you do is have the thought, you tell the animal what you want them to do, like come over and sit on my lap. And as you're mentally saying that, and you can say it verbally out loud, but you can just mentally think that. And while you're mentally thinking it, you see it in your mind. See your animal coming over to you, sitting on your lap. See yourself petting him so that you're telling him what's going to happen. And then you give him the feeling tone. Maybe you're smiling, maybe your animal is smiling. So you're giving the feeling tone of, fun and comfort. So, you send these sensory feelings out, you send the auditory out, and you send the image out. So that's what animal communication is. It's just becoming more aware of the thoughts in your head and the the pictures that the imagery in your mind and the feelings in your body, and that's all it is.
So I think it's very, very interesting and telling because, in your mind, in your story, you're still like kind of struggling a little bit and you're like, oh, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if this is a thing. I don't know if my mind is just feeling extra creative and outrageous today and is feeding me this wonderful story that my cat is talking to me. But by the third time, you were somehow aware enough at a deeper level to even invite your cat to share how he was feeling. And I feel like there are
That's
so
true.
many people that will be listening to this or watching this podcast, this vlogcast, really on YouTube, who will be able to relate to that. It's like, okay, on one level, our mind is saying, yeah, that's not possible. Nobody ever taught me about that. None of the biology classes I took ever mentioned it. None of the sociology or the psychology classes talked to, the only psychology classes that addressed thinking animals could talk to you were the ones that were in your abnormal psychology book that were usually right before the headings on medication and psychiatric treatment. And so we've been raised to kind of doubt or distrust, most of us anyway, or simply dismiss and not even consider it. And yet there's some deeper part of us, especially when we invite an animal into our home, into our family, into our lives, and we fall in love, then that love creates this channel of empathy that helps us to open up in other pathways that our mind simply doesn't acknowledge because it can't go there. The mind, I often tell my students that animal communication is what happens in the space between our thoughts. We have to be in our bodies. And I love what you're sharing, way before I ever thought I could be one of the ones that would talk to animals. Because I also came to this later in life and was the one that hired animal communicators. I thought I'm going to go hire one of those special people to help me understand my tortoise or my cat or my dog or my parrot, right? Whatever's going on. And so way before I ever even considered it, I ran across the work of Dr. Temple Grandin, who is autistic, high
Right.
functioning, and works almost exclusively with commercial livestock animals to better their
Right.
lives and create humane conditions for them while they're alive. And her work was so seminal to me because she talked about how she thinks in pictures because autism can create a different pathway through which information comes in. And so if it was visual and she could grasp it that way, then she could learn it in a snap. If it was just auditory or something else, it was like she talks about how algebra made no sense to her, which I can relate to,
Yes.
so I must have. So I was actually, mathematically speaking, I don't think I got any of that DNA from either side of my family, but I was a little better at geometry because it was visual and I could kind of work with the shapes a little more easily and kind of try to at least, reason out or approach it from different perspectives. And so I was so fascinated by that and how she talked about she would get down at the cows level and she would see their world from their perspective and she could see the things that would maybe spook them or scare them or put them off and really resonate with that because those were some of the same things that would trigger her with changes in her environment. And I feel like it planted a seed in me to begin to explore other ways to see and experience my world. And even though it took several more years, and ultimately a download in meditation one morning where I distinctly heard the words, "You are an animal sensitive intuitive." And I still had to go and ask my mentor what that meant because I was like, well, that's cool, but I have no idea. So it's like they just don't give up on us. And it doesn't, there
Yeah.
is this misnomer. And I love that you said that, okay, yeah, there's this misnomer that everybody that talks to animals grows up on a farm surrounded by 20 different species and they spend long summers laying in the grass talking to the bumblebees. No, literally we can, not only can we all do this, but it used to be a part of our daily vocabulary. It was the way that earlier iterations of us would hunt and find water, and it's still the way that the animals use. It still happens today in more rural aboriginal communities. And so it's not that if you're listening to this, you're watching this and you're thinking, okay, I can kind of relate to what Diana's saying because I did not grow up in an animalistic family or an animal-centric family. And I didn't have a special affinity for any animal, or I didn't have an opportunity to get to know animals or whatever it is. It's like, if you're listening to this, especially if you're still listening to this, you are totally already doing it at some level, and it's just
Yes.
about refinement. And so Diana, I would love to share, because you mentioned that you found a book, so something you started to
Oh,
and I love that your cats, I mean, what better teachers could we possibly have, right? But could you share a little bit about more of the unpacking of it? Like, how did you, because
yes.
there is a point at which we're just like anything else, I was born with musical talent, but I still had to practice my scales. I still had to do the things that would help me trust and feel confident sharing my abilities with others reliably. So I would love to hear kind of the next step in your journey.
Yes, and before I do that, I just want to address what you were saying about Temple Grandin.
Mm,
She probably because she was autistic, she was completely so in tune with the pictures in the mind
mhm, mhm.
is how she really operated. However, all of us, maybe not to that degree, but all of us have pictures in our mind. And a good example I always give is if you think about a friend, you can't think about a friend without seeing her in your mind. It's so subtle, you're not even aware that you're seeing her in your mind, but everything, thoughts are visual. If you think about what you're going to eat for dinner, you're going to see it in your mind. If you think about what am I going to wear, you see your clothes in your mind, and on and on and on. Everything is visual. So it's so the picture thoughts are pictures, and they're so natural that we're not even aware of them. So as we said, just becoming more aware. And to answer your question about how I developed it, so then because of my three little incidences with my cats, then my curiosity. So I got a book, actually, it was by Penelope Smith, and it was her Talk to Animal book. And I have an intro book myself. It's just an ebook, but it breaks down our how we use our clairvoyance, the images in our mind, how we use them, how we use it in our everyday interactions with people. We're not even aware of it. And how we use our clairaudience and how we use our clairsentience in our everyday interactions with one another. Um, but that being said, so that's the I read her book, and I just took receiving when you're beginning receiving thoughts from animals is more challenging because we don't trust ourselves and we don't believe it, and so we have to kind of we have to practice a lot, and workshops are good because you kind of learn to trust yourself and why you should trust yourself, and you learn all this you learn to overcome all your blocks like writing, like anything else. um, but now I lost my chain of thought. Penelope Smith. Oh,
You were
but
talking about Temple Grandin and Penelope
yeah,
Smith. Yes.
sending animals. I mean, sending animals. Sending thoughts is so much easier, and so that's how I started practicing by sending thoughts. One day, for example, I'm and it's fascinating when you see that they can hear that it's working. It's working.
Right,
It's
exactly.
all it's always working, but when you start to realize that. So one time, for example, in how our listeners can begin with their own animals, I was making some tea, and I said mentally to my cat, Yudi again. He was on the counter watching me, and I said to him mentally, and I showed him the picture. I said, "Meet me out on the hammock, and you can lay on my lap." Or on my body in the hammock, and I showed him the picture. And so I'm making tea, and he jumps off the counter and leaves. And I thought, well, that didn't work. So
Right.
it took me about another 5 minutes or so, maybe 10 minutes, getting my tea, brewing my tea, pouring my tea, grab my book. I walk out the door to my little patio, to my hammock, and there was Yudi waiting for me. So not only had he heard me, he remembered. I mean, he was waiting for me for like 10 minutes. So you can begin, people can begin on that level. Just, and if the animal does not respond, don't think that it's not working. They might not feel like sitting on your lap. They're just like us. Maybe they're comfortable where they are and they don't want to. But don't give up. Just keep trying. So that's what I did. And then I took workshops. I worked with 3 different teachers over a course of maybe 5 years, in workshops, you definitely you have the energy of the group. It's you can also see how other people get their information. You begin to understand what your medium is. Maybe you're more clairvoyant, maybe your partner is more clairaudient, and you see how they arrive at answers. We all probably arrive at the same answer, but we get it in different ways. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. You might pick up this from the animal, they might pick up something different. Um, so, if a person's consulting 2 or 3 different animal communicators and they get different answers, it doesn't mean like one's right and one's wrong. We're all picking up different aspects. And that's what's so fascinating about it, because it's not just black and white. It's not just one way. So that's what I did. And then to teaching professionally, I mean, working professionally, I still wasn't working professionally at this point. I was just, having fun with it and learning. And then my cat Cuckoo died. He was tragically killed. And it's a long story. And it was such a long story and such a devastating story that my friends got tired of listening to me. So I started writing. And that was my first book, Cuckoo Zen. But when Cuckoo died, yeah, I mean, I literally stopped doing artwork like like that. And someone once said to me, "Oh my God, you're so Italian. Your cat dies and you stop doing art." But it wasn't like that. It was when Cuckoo died. I realized that I hadn't listened to him, which was part of the problem. Um, Not that we never should blame ourselves for anything. We do anyway. We always blame ourselves. We feel guilty. We have a lot of, as part of the grieving process, we're angry. But, really, it's very true. Maharaji, I think, said that no one dies before their time or stays one moment after. And it's really true. Um, I had a premonition the night before he died. It's a long story. It's in my book. But the point is, I knew I wasn't clairvoyant enough to know exactly what was going to happen, but I knew something was going to happen. I felt it. It was going to be catastrophic. And I thought I live in Los Angeles. I thought we were going to have another earthquake. So I tried to prepare as much as I could, but I had to leave. I was house sitting, but I knew something was going to happen. And then the next day, I'm not going to tell you the ending of my book, but the next day something happened. And the point is, I'm just talking about death for a moment. How did I know that something was going to happen before it happened if that happening or that event wasn't already in motion? So everything is played out the way it's supposed to be played out. There are no accidents or coincidences in the universe. And that being said, I didn't know that at the time. When you're grieving, you're just in pain. And so that's when, so I just, my priorities suddenly shifted. And I thought, I was so consumed with my artwork. It completely consumed me. Nothing wrong with that. But I wanted to change. I wanted to do something. I wanted to listen to animals on a professional level and help people because I hadn't listened to Cuckoo. And so I began doing it professionally. My animals taught me animal communication. They directed me to start doing it professionally. My cat Bootsy got me to do healing work. He told a communicator when he was dying, it's hard to talk to your own animals. I consult communicators when I'm emotionally upset. And this communicator told me
Absolutely, I
that,
do too, frequently.
yes,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, if you have problems, you don't think you're hearing
that's
your
what we're
animal,
here
well, we're all in
for.
the same boat.
We're a community, we're a family of individuals who adore animals and have invested a tremendous amount of time and often money to reliably tune in and to also recognize when we're blocked, when we're stuck, when we're too close to a situation, or when we're in grief and we need a friend, we need a support, we need an encouragement, we need an insight that maybe that pathway just isn't available to us right now.
Mm-hmm.
Trust me, when my box turtle escaped, and I mean, I
Mm.
lost count of the number of animal communicator friends and colleagues that I invited into my world to help me. So this is, I want those of you who are listening and you're thinking, oh, I do this. It's like, it's easier to hire people. It's like, well, it is, there's a time and place for that. And there's also a time and place for recognizing when the animals are honoring you by opening up, being vulnerable to you, and becoming brave enough to give it a try and speak to you. And so that, anyway, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's just, I think that's
No,
really, it's a really important point. Once you're joining a family, you're joining a community, just listening to this podcast, you're joining a family, you're joining a community, and we are here for you, you know?
and so many times too, when you hear, like, let's say you suddenly think to feed your dog, and then you
Mm-hmm.
turn and he's already there at his bowl, or you
Mm-hmm.
think, oh, I should take him for a walk, and you look and he's by the door waiting. You've heard it's not your thought. You think it's your thought, but it's your dog's. He's telling you he wants to go for a walk. So yes, they're delighted when we hear them, and they are always communicating to us. And so, I had this student once in my one of my workshops. She was 16 and she was blind, and we were working from photographs, and I forgot she was blind, and I told everyone to look at the photographs, and I thought, whoops,
Yeah.
she can't see. So I said, oh, and if I said, or I said, have your partner describe the animal to you. I said, and then I thought to myself, she's going to have a hard time with this. So I added, and if you don't think you're hearing your animal, now I tell this, you probably do too, to people who are learning. If you don't think that you're hearing your animal, then just make it up because it's all in your imagination anyway. That's what I said. And so it turned out this woman, this 16-year-old girl, she was spot on. She got a lot of information by not even, she couldn't see, but she was told what the animal looked like. She was holding the photo in her hand. She was connected to the energy. And as she was leaving, she cried and she hugged me and she said, thank you so much. I never knew it was all in the imagination, and I didn't know the imagination was real. I thought,
Oh,
wow.
wow.
And the
Yeah.
imagination, I mean, think about it. I mean, it's so profound, and it's so
Yeah.
I mean, the imagination is real, of course. Everything is the imagination. Every invention, everything everything is mind. So yeah, I mean, it's let it be your imagination because chances are it's correct.
And I
And
think
that's a
we've
good.
all had these experiences of just knowing something or just having a gut instinct that life as we know it was going to change in a small or a very profound way, and not being able to know, and maybe even getting a little anxious about it, maybe even beating ourselves up about it, maybe giving ourselves a stern lecture to grow a set and grow up already and snap out of it, or whatever we've been told. But, although I feel like most people don't really, it's not a topic of casual conversation. Like, oh, did you have any, intuitive hunches today? I have yet to ask somebody, have they ever, imagined or thought of a friend and then not, heard from them, or just ever kind of known something or felt something or sensed something without knowing how. We all have these hunches. And it's a part of our inner connectivity. It's a part, I like to use the analogy, if those of you who are listening or watching have ever read anything by Peter Wallenbeck. He wrote a book called The Secret Life of Trees, and how they have this underground network that allows them to communicate when a predator is coming, or when somebody in the network needs a little extra assistance from everyone else, or when there are beneficial nutrients to be had. And it's amazing I mean, when I remember watching the movie Avatar and watching the science, kind of the scientists versus the commercial business people is kind of what's going on in that movie. And it's a pretty old movie now, but how the people on the planet Pandora were so aware of the network of nature, and like the rootless wireless, kind of the wireless, and the trees were connected and the animals were connected, and I just thought, I want to live in that world. I want to live in
Hmm.
that world. I have so frequently in my life thought I'd like to change species, and I have to say, one of the goals of launching this series, Let's Talk to Animals, was realizing that there's a part of me that finally feels really glad to be part of my own species. I finally feel like I'm starting to find my people. After kind of like just basically not fitting in anywhere ever for my whole life, I feel like there are some pretty drop dead amazing Homo sapiens on this planet. And I no longer feel like seceding from the union. Sometimes there is still moments, but it's just like, no, wait a minute. Like, we have a lot we can bring to the table. And that's one of the main reasons to keep listening to a podcast like this instead of how to get and fit in 5 minutes a day, or how to, go on permanent vacation before you're 50 or whatever else. There's so many amazing podcasts out there. But one of the main reasons to keep tuning in to this community is because we really do have an incredible ability to harness, to tap into the power of imagination and imagine a better world, and imagine it into being, and imagine it for all species. I share this a lot, but I'm sure it's lovely on Mars, and it's probably a really interesting place to visit, but I like it here. Like, I would like to stay. And I would like to be able to go to national parks, or local green spaces, or lakes and a mountain, go hiking. I mean, I want to be able to live and let live with total respect, which is where I have this deep resonance with the path that you're following. We haven't talked too much about that, but how that kind of wraps in with the bigger picture of your life, and
Mm.
the respect that you bring, this heart-centric respect. And that's really what I feel is the activating space for interspecies communication. The animals will meet us more than halfway when we say, I'm committed. I'm not certain that this is something I can do, but I'm committed to opening myself more and more and more, and inviting in the assistance that I need to tune back into the rest of the neural network that every other species shares and has been sharing. I want to be a part of again. I don't want to look at myself like, all those big blockbuster movies where they have like the horrible alien species comes in that just wants to suck all the water and, eat us or use us as incubators. It's like, and the metaphor is so obvious that that's us on the planet. We can also be contributors. We can also be a blessing to all the other species around us. And it starts by, if you don't know where to start, if you're listening right now or you're watching, you're like, man, I don't even know where to start. I don't have time. I don't have energy. I don't know what to do first. Ask your animals, because they know.
Or just be with your animals, right? Because they do know, and they're there. To drop down to their frequency, just look at them. They're joyful. They're in the present moment. We break a leg, or they break a leg, and it hurts when they walk. We break a leg, and we attach all this stuff to it. Oh, I won't be able to do this, and how am I? Oh, how do I look? And and that's what creates our worry and our stress and our depression. It's all our mind stuff. So important. So we learn so much from the animals, because when I have a lot to say here with what you were saying, and I hope I don't lose it all. But one thing is, when I'm communicating with an animal, I mean, sometimes when I'm doing animals in spirit, I write and it'll just kind of flow in, but I don't really get a lot of philosophy like some people do. my communication with animals is pretty direct. It's pretty direct and straightforward. That's how I find animals to be. Um, but that being said, when you were talking about interconnectedness, I wanted to add that yes, and when we start to communicate with animals, they really open up your heart to all life, and you begin to have that reverence for all life just naturally happens because I remember when I first started communicating with animals and just to really realize that I'm not the only one here on the earth, our species. And then you begin to, become more sensitive to everything around you. And it all begins somewhere, right? For me, it began with animals. And I was sensitive before in terms of being sensitive with my artwork, with my unconscious, dreams and my art was always intuitive. I've
Well,
always
you
been
were
an
tapped
intuitive
into
person.
the creative channels. Your imagination was probably having a field day every day. Like so much fun
You know,
creating this artwork, right?
I suppose it was, especially because my work, it wasn't intellectual, it was intuitive.
Mhm.
In
Very
fact, it
right-brained.
it was so intuitive that when I had to write art statements, when you're having an exhibition, you have to talk about your work. I
Yes.
had a hard time
Yeah.
because I didn't really know what my work was about. And now, actually 25 years later, I'm resuming my art again, and now I can look back on my early work and I can talk about it. I think it's taken 25 years for my conscious mind to get caught up with my unconscious mind. So that says a lot in itself. We already know so much that the conscious mind doesn't know. And that's the whole thing with communicating with animals, or where do you begin, like you asked. We have to remember that we're already there. We're already here and we're already connected. But what keeps us separated is the mind. We have a lot of mind chatter. I remember one person once saying to me, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any chatter in my mind. Like the person wasn't even aware of it, apparently.
Yeah.
We all have chatter in our mind from the moment we wake up. It doesn't stop until the moment we go to sleep. It's like non-stop. And when you're on a retreat, like I used to go on Buddhist retreats, prior to the pandemic, and you don't talk to anyone, you're completely alone in yourself, and that's when you really hear the mind. It's like magnified. you
Yes.
know so
Yes.
meditation has helped me calm the mind. Not that it doesn't wander, it still wanders like crazy. I still get emotionally upset. I still get obsessed with thinking certain things. If something's bothering me and I can't get it out of my mind, I'm in the same boat with everybody else. But meditation, I don't know how people can live without it, because it certainly has, you know, the way it helps, especially with Zen meditation, is you're sitting and you're watching, you begin to watch your thoughts. So you begin to see your negativity. You begin to see your ego. You begin to see everything. It just, and then you begin to see that if you stay present with your breath, and if you can really do that and just stay present with right here, thoughts come in, and if you don't engage in them, see, we automatically engage, it's
Mhm.
automatic. But if you consciously see, okay, here's a thought, i'm not going to I'm not going to think. Thoughts come, but I don't have to think them. So instead of thinking, you stay with the breath, and the thought disappears, and the next one comes in, and you don't go with it, and it disappears. And if you go with it, you don't even know you're gone, and before you know it, you realize, whoops, I'm not focused on my breath. I was having this conversation with my friend in my mind. So you
Mhm.
come back. You have to keep bringing. The Buddhists say that your mind is like a wild horse. You have to keep bringing it back. Bringing it. You fall off, you bring it back. You fall off, you bring it back, because it's all over the place. People say, "Oh, I can't meditate." Nobody can. The nature of the mind is like this. So you have to apply a little effort, maybe a lot. you don't have to apply really effort at all. You just have to breathe. That's it. Just stay focused on your breath. And the more you practice, the easier it becomes. And then the less distraction you have in the mind. Now, some people don't have a problem. They can just hear animals, probably like people tell communicators say, oh, I go into the animal shelter and they're all talking to me at once, the animals. That doesn't happen to me. I only hear the animal I'm speaking to, a dialogue like we're having. So that's my way of communicating. It's very, very is intimate and personal. I don't hear everybody at once. So
And
everybody's
that may
different,
be
but
indicative of your personality. I mean, I'm kind of the same way. I pretty much, I'm an introvert by nature.
oh,
I
me too.
prefer, yeah, I prefer to have deep one-on-one conversations with people. But my mother, whom I'm living with now after my father has passed, she's an extrovert and she loves, I mean, she sees a crowd of people and she's like, come on, let's go meet some new people. And I'm like, oh no, let's not, and it's like, I'm frantically looking for, the first thing I do when I enter a room of crowd is I want to know where the potty is, it's like, so I can go and hide. And it's like, so I think that's all going to inform how we embark upon and how we allow in communications and the nature of what even the information we receive. It's like, I believe the animal sends out a whole picture, but it was so cool last week, where I've got a group of students that's just starting a little bit more of what I don't like the word advanced, but different, maybe a little bit more intentional part of our animal communication adventure. And, each one of them got, like you were saying earlier, a different piece about, we were talking with our dog and they all got it. So like when we put it all together, it offers a more comprehensive, full-fledged kind of a 3D Technicolor picture of what's going on, because I believe we all come to this journey, this adventure that we call animal communication, with different pathways, maybe more open, different, maybe those are just kind of part of even our genes, our genetic wiring. Like I came in as an introvert, like I was looking for the potty before I knew what it was called, and my mom came in as an extrovert. And so, there are so many different things about ourselves, including the nature of our mind. It's like just realizing that my mind is doing a great job. And I tell it this all the time these days. And you're doing an A+++ job thinking. You are a master thinker. Great job. How would you like to think about this? And I'll give it the job of, receiving information from the animal, running it through my right brain with all of the pictures and the smells and the tastes and the soundtrack and everything that's going on, popping it over into my left brain. It, decodes it into words, and then offering it to my mind, and my mind can tell me, and then I can share it with the animal's person. And, these days it's fairly seamless. Like I don't have to sit there and break it all down. So actually when I started teaching, it was kind of challenging. So I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to try to
Yes.
explain, because I promised my students, I said, I'm going to tell you how I do it. I'm going to give you my personal process because you asked me to teach you. I wasn't thinking I'm going to hang out a shingle and be an animal communication teacher. I'm more the one that's always signing up for courses. But I said, you guys want to know how I do it because it's impactful for you, then that's my commitment to you. I'm going to share my personal process, and then you can try it on for size and then start noticing what resonates with you. And then you're going to start your journey and you're going to keep going. And I doubt very much that I will be their sole teacher. In fact, some of them have already taken many different classes. You studied with 3 different teachers. I've lost count. I mean, the first teacher I studied with, I'm very grateful for. She didn't even teach us to use pictures. Like she didn't even, she was like, you don't even have to know what species. And in fact, that's one of the coolest things about animal communication is I often find that if you didn't tell me I was talking to a dog or a snake instead of a human being, I would probably think I was talking to one of the coolest Homo sapiens I've ever met. So we just take species, take gender, take all of those variables that our mind just loves to hang on to, and just kind of throw them all out there to our imagination and say, see what comes back. What do you sense about this being?
I like
Versus
that.
getting a lot of description coming in on the front end. And we are at time. I definitely want, Diana, I feel you are one of those people I feel like I could talk to you all day and then
Yeah.
some. So I would love to have you back. But for now, we'd like to keep to an hour or let actually we'd like to keep to about
Oh.
40 minutes, but we're definitely way over that. But I do before we close out, I want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. If they want to take your workshops, if they want to get some of the books that you've talked about. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? I know there's lots of stuff going on your website. So if you could just kind of share where to go first and next and that sort of thing, that'd be awesome.
Okay, yeah. And I just want to say really quick that what you said, I never thought about that before. It being part of our personality. I'm an introvert,
Mhm.
one-on-one. That's how I
Yeah.
direct, how I get my information from my
Yeah.
animals. And another thing you said
Yeah.
too, it's so true. Just go with it. And one little technique that was given to me a long time ago, and it works for me, is you take nice deep inhale, and on the exhale, just know you're going to hear the answer, and
Oh,
just
that's cool.
spontaneous. Like don't wait for it, don't anticipate it. Just like
I
go with
love
it,
that.
because if you're wrong, you're wrong. I mean, who cares? Just have fun with it. Lighten up.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just like any other conversation. I noticed the tendency, and I came to this pretty honestly with my first teacher who tested us a lot. And I have really had to work hard to break the habit of right or wrong. It's like I have never, and I share this a lot on the podcast, so apologies if you've heard it before, some of you who are listening or watching, but I have never yet come out of a conversation with another being of any species, including my own, going, man, I really nailed that. Like I understood everything. I communicated perfectly. We were seamless. We were flawless. I have never had a conversation like that in my life. So expecting to understand it, if we don't understand something, or even if we think we're not getting anything, or if we think what we're getting is cuckoo, we can ask,
Hmm.
to teach ourselves to get curious, to wonder, to play, to ask more questions and have fewer answers, to say, my job is to ask a question, the very best question that I can, with the intention that I really want to get to know this other being. I want to be of service. I want to open my heart up. I want to receive the uniqueness that is them. And that intention will hopefully, I believe it does. I believe there's an energy to intention setting that can overcome all manner even of mental doubts. And so to just say, my intention is to be of service to you, and hopefully to offer my attention to you and get to know you better. And so maybe I'm going to ask some questions, and maybe you won't even answer the questions I asked. Maybe you're going to tell me something else that you want to say. And I love, oh, look who just showed up. For those of you who are
Louise.
watching, I see somebody very beautiful and furry in the background. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I've got a little preening parrot here on my lap. Yeah. Precious angel.
But
So where,
it's true.
yeah.
Listen here, not here. And as you were talking before about that solar plexus, or hunches,
Mhm.
where do we, our gut feeling, that's our intuition, and it's always right. It's never wrong. Just go with your gut feeling. Just feel it here. So,
Yeah, in your heart and in
uh,
your gut brain, which we're
gut
just
brain.
starting to really learn about here in the West. Our gut brain is a fascinating place to visit. It's a cool place to live, especially since I think we already live there and we just don't know it. So,
Exactly.
so tell us how to reach out to you if people have
Okay.
questions, if
The,
they
the
want
best
to
way
connect.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the best way is really just my website, dianadelmonte.com, because on there I have online pre-recorded courses and it'll take you there. I have books, it'll take you there. It has a contact form. If you have a question, you can contact me there. And then you'll have my personal email once you contact me through the website. So everything pretty much is there.
Awesome. Awesome. So just go play around, have fun. There's lots to explore. There's lots to learn. If you'd like to get in touch with me, or Pearl, that is, if you heard that chirp, somebody woke up. Did you wake up? He said, I was snoozing on your knee and I don't really understand why my nap time was suddenly terminated. Yeah. If you'd like to get in touch with us, it's animallovelanguages.com. We've been talking a lot today about the different sensory pathways through which intuition can be transmitted across species boundaries. And if you head over to animallovelanguages.com, click on Learn with Me and free tools, you can find 2 awesome free tools, a 5-day animal communication camp that shares 5 of the major sensory pathways that you can start exploring with your own pets, and a 4-part intuitive pet parent workshop that helps you get to know your pet, includes some of my favorite meditations. See, meditation can be fun, and I believe, based on feedback I've gotten, that you may discover this if you head over there. And most importantly, you can find the link to this podcast, and you can find it on many of your favorite streaming platforms. You can head over to YouTube and watch any episode you want. Podcast is offered free. You can, if you're looking in search of a teacher, this is a great resource for you. You can hear from so many amazing souls who have dedicated their lives to making the world a safer, happier, healthier place for all species to share. And so if that sings to your heart, we'd love to see you over on the podcast page. Diana, thank you again so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
It's just such a joy to meet you. And Henry here, those of you who are listening, you'll just have to imagine the most gorgeous, it looks like, it's hard to tell on Zoom sometimes, like black, white, gray.
Yeah, he's
gorgeous
kind of a tabby.
boy.
He's
a
20.
tabby. 20. So we've got 20, yeah. And we've got Pearl, who's gray 23. And white, who's 23. So yeah, amazing. This is why it's worth heading over to YouTube, right? And thank you so much to you, hanging in there with us. This was a little longer episode, but there was so much to say and share, and it feels like something that needs to be said and shared. And so if you've enjoyed today's episode with Diana and myself and our wonderful interspecies families, please consider sharing this podcast or the vlogcast with a friend who loves animals, who loves the planet. Please consider giving us 5 stars or, 50 stars if that's available in your area. And please consider supporting us with a like, with a comment, with a request or a question. We'd love to hear from you. It's great to know that this show is making its way out in the world. We're still a young show. And so, it's a big, wide, wonderful world, lots of folks to reach and lots of new friends to make. And so we're very grateful for your good company, your time and presence. Look forward to welcoming you back next week for another fresh, wonderful episode of Let's Talk to Animals. Okay, we're sending you all of our love and look forward to hearing about your interspecies communication adventures. See you next week, and bye for now.